But you really do have to start focusing on appreciation. You really have to start altering your life intentionally. And it's kind of like with spirituality, where the people that are far more likely to start down a spiritual path are usually people that have been hurt or broken in some way. Somebody whose life perspective let them down and caused kind of a void that they needed to repair and fix and reevaluate. If you can only support creators who provide value and make you think, please consider contributing to my Patreon page the next time you watch one of my videos. Hey everybody, and welcome. Today I wanted to talk about loss. So recently I was talking to a friend of mine, and she has been struggling with a particularly challenging breakup. She'd been cheated on and was struggling with, why this person would cheat and why he would leave, why she wasn't good enough for him, after all these times he told her that she was essentially perfect and not good enough for him, why exactly would this happen? And a lot of the things that she was talking about, are completely understandable. I think that many of us, when we go through a breakup, often blame ourselves for what happened. We try to look and see, well, what did I do wrong? What happened? What exactly was, where did I mess up? Kind of where that goes. And that kind of breakup is challenging enough as it is. But as I was talking to this friend, I realized that the pain she was feeling was actually related more to a significant loss she had suffered in her life, which was related more to somebody leaving rather than death. But it really did kind of redefine the way that I saw her perspective, because she had been saying things like, I don't understand how he could just give up on something that was that good. I don't understand how he didn't appreciate what he had at the time. And I think for many of us, this concept of appreciating what we have is not something that many people are actually pretty good at. That's why this saying, you don't know what you had until it's gone, is so prevalent. But I do know that for me, it's not a struggle to appreciate the people that are currently in my life. And I think a lot of that goes back to the death of my sibling when I was 7. At 7, I was forced to reevaluate my life, reevaluate what was important and what was valuable. And, the 9/11 happened 4 weeks later, and the whole world went through that same process, essentially. And it solidified in me. I was greatly shifted by that death. And it changed the way that I look at the world. So I appreciated the people in my life. And, I work very hard to maintain my relationships. And I realized that, I can't be the only one involved in maintaining a relationship. So it's always a little sad when a friend leaves or moves, or, you just kind of fall apart as friends. But I always recognize how meaningful they are when they're with me, which means that when they leave, despite the fact that it's sad, I can at least be grateful that I was fully present and fully available for the relationship when it existed. Now, for this friend, the loss that she went through was actually more of a divorce scenario, where the entire family essentially was broken apart, and nobody left by absolute necessity. Nobody died, but everybody was gone. And personally, as somebody who has also lost individuals through methods not involving death, I know that the pain of that kind of loss can actually be much more intense, because you do tend to go into the blame mode, where you're like, well, what did I do wrong? What could I have done better? how could I have prevented this pain? And to a certain degree, you might pull away even more from the people that you do care about, because, what happens if they kind of start to cause pain too? So you can be greatly affected by this kind of loss and have a fear that people will leave that becomes very, very strong. And I think that's the case for this person. She has a strong fear that people are going to leave her, and put that on top of the anxiety she felt as a kid, and it's kind of a whole big thing. It's not necessarily good. I do think it'll benefit her in the long run when she can work through these emotions and things. But it was helpful for me to recognize that she has suffered a great loss, and that has altered her perspective significantly in ways that I had not realized before. So when she was talking about how could it be that this person didn't recognize what he had in her, I tried to explain that for most people, I don't think they fear losing a close relationship as much as she and I do, because it doesn't even enter their mind to be worried about that. Whereas for somebody who suffered a significant loss, and a significant loss can only be determined by you and, your behaviors. It could be a dog. I mean, that's entirely possible that your pet died and that was a significant loss for you. But for people who suffer a significant loss, that does seem to leave kind of a lasting impression. And it causes you to really see the importance of the people in your life and being fully present while they're there. And it seemed like this particular loss had affected her so intensely that she couldn't even remember what it felt like to not appreciate the people in her life. She couldn't understand why he wasn't also worried about losing the people he cared about. Why he didn't think at all about how his actions could ruin the entire relationship or change everything. And to a certain extent, I can understand that feeling. It's challenging when you're somebody who views relationships as extremely important to discover that somebody else does not. And you can't really know if somebody does or doesn't until you're already pretty deep into the relationship. So it can be quite challenging going through kind of a breakup of sorts, of any sort. It could be a friendship, could be romantic, like this one was. But that significant loss can very thoroughly alter your perspective when it comes to things like that. I think it might be more common to blame yourself after a significant loss than it would be if you hadn't had a significant loss. And, a breakup could be that significant loss for you as well. So, it's really hard to say, to what extent or who has been through this or who hasn't been through this. And you can't really judge people on their life events and be like, oh, well, you don't understand because you've never been through it. Which is why I tend to not want to box people up, because I'm like, I just can't know what's going on in their brain. Anything could have shifted anything. So for this individual, when she started blaming herself, for a while I thought it was just about the breakup. But looking deeper, you got the sense that the loss was much stronger than that. And I think it goes back to she actually blames herself for the divorce scenario. And she's the child of divorce, not somebody who's been divorced. So we all know that that's fairly common for a child to blame themselves for the separation of parents. But she didn't just lose her parents in this particular loss, she also lost her siblings, in that they moved out due to the instability of the household as well. So it makes sense to a great extent for her to be feeling broken after this kind of event. And it was kind of weird to discover that she may have this strong sense of loss, given that she didn't present, standard grief symptoms. She hadn't been crying a lot. She didn't go into mourning or anything. It was kind of like her life continued on. And I think it's possible that the loss actually hit her very slowly. Like, it was a day-by-day kind of thing where, she started to recognize individual things that she could never have again due to this separation. And that meant that her mourning period is extended far beyond what the average mourning period was, because she doesn't even necessarily know that she's in mourning. And it's possible that I'm reading this entirely wrong, but if that is the case, it goes to show you that grief may not present itself in the same way in everybody. And I could actually see how this kind of loss could be quite significant and startling for an individual, because you don't even necessarily recognize that you've been through a loss until you start looking back at it and re-evaluating the emotions that you felt over a very long period of time about this situation. I think that for her, the emotions have just been kind of compounding together for a long period of time and affecting her mood in ways that isn't necessarily recognizable in the moment, but is in the after effect. It's kind of one of those situations where hindsight is 20/20. So it's helpful for, I think, all of us to recognize that loss doesn't always present itself in the same way, that grief doesn't always occur in expected ways either, and that a significant loss in somebody's life can alter their perspective in huge ways that you don't even necessarily recognize. I don't know if individuals who haven't been in a loss can appreciate the world in the way that somebody that has does often. But my intuition, my gut, tells me that it is possible for somebody to appreciate the individuals in their life without losing somebody in a major damaging sort of way. But you really do have to start focusing on appreciation. You really have to start altering your life intentionally. And it's kind of like with spirituality, where the people that are far more likely to start down a spiritual path are usually people that have been hurt or broken in some way. Somebody whose life perspective let them down and caused kind of a void that they needed to repair and fix and reevaluate. I don't think that's necessary to start a spiritual journey, but it does seem to be more common. Which means that for most of us, change usually only comes when it's forced. And it's very rare for people to choose to change. And if they do choose to change, it's usually because they were forced to change in the first place. So, if you are interested in trying to reevaluate your life, despite the fact that maybe you haven't had this kind of significantly altered perspective, and that's for you to decide. I'm not going to judge anything that's happened in your life. It's entirely possible that people have left you left and right, and none of it's affected you. That's perfectly fine too. Whatever level you've been connected to people is fine. Whatever connection you've had to pets, whatever connection you've had to significant others, it's an individual thing. You don't need to judge yourself for whatever has happened in your life. But if you haven't kind of experienced this shift in perspective to where you appreciate the people that you have in your life while they're there, I would recommend that you start trying to be appreciative even though you haven't had that experience forced upon you, because it will improve your life in ways that you don't even know. you don't live in regret when you do everything you can to appreciate the people in your lives. And I know that regret is one of those things that people fear most when it comes to death, is, what will I regret not doing or doing when I'm on my deathbed? And I think if you've suffered a significant loss, this actually becomes a question that you consider much earlier in your life. And it might be a question that everybody should really consider more often. So I guess that's kind of what I'm encouraging you to do. Consider how you want your life to look. How do you want people to see your life when you're on your deathbed? How do you want to see your life when you're on your deathbed? What do you want that to look like? And if it's not along the path that you're currently on, maybe you need to start considering changes within your life. It's not an easy thing. It might not be something that's valuable for you to do, and it might be something that is. So it's entirely your choice. I definitely think that this could benefit you greatly, but, you're the one that has to live your life, so you choose. And I think that's everything I have to say today. So thanks for watching. I hope you liked this. I hope it got you thinking. I do hope that it increases your own appreciation for the things in your life. If you enjoyed this video, click the like button, subscribe, click the notification bell, and if you have any questions or ideas or topics that you'd like me to cover or comments about this video, definitely leave them in the comment section and I will do my best to respond. But thanks for watching again, and I will talk to you soon. Bye.